Hey, I want to thank you for joining this week's episode of the CBC Home Service Success Network. We're coming to you on a little different day this week because, due to a business issue, I've got to be out of the office on Friday. But again, I've been having this one in my mind, and I think it's one we need to talk about. And so, decided to do it this week because I didn't want to hold out for another week. So, here's the question to you. This may have happened to you in the past. If it hadn't, it probably will one day. You get that fateful phone call, you get that notification that your star player isn't going to be here. It could be a number of reasons. They could have found other employment. Possibly you had to terminate them, which one guy I know did this year. He had to terminate his top performer. And the reason was because the guy was breaking the company rules and doing things that were improper. But there's also a lot of other cases that come up, such as somebody gets injured, or here's the real bad one, they actually pass away. These things happen. And this is what we often find, and this is what Cheryl deals with all the time, is panic-stricken business owners and managers that all of a sudden they've got to find somebody and they got to find them right now, today. They're hurting. So that's the question. How are you building your backup techs? How are you building your second string? Have you got a bench? You know, it may sound simple, but it's actually one of the biggest challenges facing every industry today. A lot of times we focus on what's happening today, and we don't really think about what happens if somebody isn't here tomorrow. The reality is that every technician on your team, they're eventually going to leave at some point. Maybe not tomorrow, maybe not next year, but eventually. So if you're not preparing for that reality, you know something? You got a lot of risk in your business and you're putting your business at risk. So, how are you dealing with it? So, Cheryl, you deal with this all the time. Panic stricken people want you to find somebody, find them fast. Sometimes it's technician, sometimes it's simply laborers. What's your thoughts on this subject?
Well, we're always, you just got to search, and the panicking doesn't get you anywhere because then what you do, you're hiring because they're breathing, you're hiring because they have some sense of normalcy, and you get them on the job site and you find out they're not trainable. So it's that's not a way to create your second string because people get hurt all the time. People retire. And so thing life happens, and once life happens, it's there, and it's a reality at that point, and chaos sets in. I get calls all the time. I need somebody right now. Well, if you need somebody right now, you're several months past being on time because now they're not trained. You're sending an untrained man out. They're doing on the job training. And that's not good for your company. It's not good for the homeowner, and it's not good for them. And that's also a question I get from a lot of guys that I interview. Do they train me before I go out? I mean, they've got accustomed to not being trained. And I think that's where a lot of the employees are missing the time because if they've got time to spend with those guys, then you've got an employee that's valuable. And you have to be doing this before it happens, not after it happens.
Okay, Josh, what's your input on this subject, on this topic?
Well, as we're sitting here talking about it, I was like, I mean, I know there's a Lowe's pretty close to you. I'm in Lowe's all the time. They're always hiring, right? Do you ever see them not hiring? Do they ever see them not saying they're not hiring? Um, Local, places like that, big box stores, Walmart, they're always hiring, right? Because they're always looking for people, whether it's to rotate out their bench um, or they have an immediate need to fill. But those places are always, they're never not hiring. I've never seen Lowe's. When's the last time you see Lowe's or Home Depot had a corporate layoff? I can't tell you the last time I've seen that. And when you do get a good person, you find the need. My old foreman will tell you that I interviewed him while I was on vacation, and I may have had a cold beverage in my hand because I was on vacation. I forgot I was doing a professional interview, but it was important that I got that interview done, because when a hot candidate comes through, they're not going to sit around. Um, they're out looking, and they're going to find something.
Yeah. And I'll give you one of a personal experience here that happened to me some years ago, which was I was teaching a seminar for CSIA in Charlotte, North Carolina. And I had actually scheduled this seminar in Charlotte so I could bring my whole workforce into that training. So they could participate, because whenever they heard people listening to me, it seemed to have a better impact on them when other people listen to it. And right before that seminar started, Josh, I had this group of my employees walked up to me and resigned 5 minutes before I was getting ready to start that seminar. It totally blew me. Now, I went on, I did the seminar, but when it was all over with, I had to rebuild my workforce starting on Monday morning the next week. And it was a really tough period in my experience there. So that's a personal side where these things can happen. Just imagine that. What would you do if everybody that worked for you decided to quit en masse? A walkout. But let's look at other businesses. Talk about professional sports. Every successful team has a bench. I can remember back in the Super Bowl some years ago, Baltimore Colts were playing. Johnny Unitas was their star quarterback, but he got injured and couldn't play. So they called on Earl Morrall, who was a backup quarterback that came in to play. He stepped in. So that's the question. If this happens to your company, if your lead technician doesn't make it, who takes their place? If your service manager resigns, who's next? Your top installer leaves unexpectedly. Who's ready? Most owners don't have an answer. Like I said, I've gone through it. I've seen people that have lost employees due to death. There's no way you can plan for this to happen. You just got to have a bench. So, Cheryl, your turn. What do you think about this?
Right, panic and stress. It's just the way it is, and the then you're putting stress on your people because everybody's having to work overtime. The ones that are left. The worst part is you have customers out there. They're waiting. They're having to be put off or canceled because maybe it was your one gas person, and without that, you couldn't get anywhere. So everything starts changing. Money gets gone, stress gets higher, more money gets gone, more stress gets higher. Then you can't think. And I think that's the biggest problem. You go into this um, black zone, I guess, and you just kind of cringe because it's hard to pick up and go. I mean, you had no choice at that time. We had a second walkout one time years later, and that time we were back up and running in a day. So we were ready, we were prepared, we could move on. But if you're not sitting there and looking for this, you don't have to sit and dream that everybody's going to leave or that you're going to lose someone. You just need to be prepared. I mean, you don't go to the beach without clean undershorts. So let's just put it that way. Prepare for what can happen and be glad when it doesn't.
I hear you, sweetie. So, Josh, what's your input at this point?
Well, you brought up, death of an employee. We had that happen. We lost our office mom. The only fortunate part about it is, I mean, no, we couldn't, obviously, we can't fire up the hiring engine, quick enough, because we're still grieving and reeling. But if you have the job documented well enough, which we did, that was probably my most well documented position in the company. We were at least able to pivot and decide who's going to do what and who, what, where, and of course she passed in season 2. Sandy did. and we were able to at least keep things moving, whether it was pretty or not. We were able to move forward until we were able to replace her.
Yeah. So, as a manager, your goals got to be simple. Josh said a key thing. Do you have documentation on how to do that job? That's vastly important. That's what saved us whenever we had this happen. We had documentation. We could move people rapidly into place with the systems we had developed. But again, as an astute manager, you've got to be developing this. That doesn't mean they're ready today to leave. It means you're intentionally preparing them for tomorrow. A lot of times we think loyal employees guarantee permanence, but to be honest with you, it doesn't. Great employees leave for reasons that may have nothing to do with you. Because one of the things that's going on right now is people love to steal employees. They love to go after existing employees to replace them. I've been to seminars. I was at a Tommy Mello Freedom event, and I listened to where that's one of the top rated persons that spoke, had a business, HVAC business, and he talked about that. That's what they were doing to fill their trucks. They were stealing every technician they could that was out there to come to work for them. So, again, great employees can leave for reasons that have nothing to do with you. Just this morning, I had a text from an employer or client telling me that one of his techs was going to a job interview today, and he was really upset. Well, again, we got to bear down and we got to do the recruiting, and we never stop recruiting. That's going to be one of the thoughts we want to leave you with today. So, Cheryl, back to you. Your turn to talk.
I've heard every reason in the book. People they quit. Some people just quit because they quit. I've never understood that. Or they go to another job for 50-cent raise, or they go from something we've done. Maybe we've not appreciated them. Maybe maybe we're part of the fault. Health issues, just the temperament of people. And some people just I interviewed one yesterday. They're just looking for a career change. It has nothing to do with job. They like the person, they like the company they're at, but in their point of life, they're looking for a career change. So it's not always bad things. It's people wanting to move to different levels. And it's kind of hard to hold it against that person. But if you can make your company more employee oriented and keep it where it needs to be, and as long as you know that there's a backup system, if somebody does happen to move, it makes it easier on you. It also makes it easier on the employee that's trying to find a new career, because it gives you a chance to say, that's good. I'm glad you told me, move on, and you have somebody to take their spot. So there's good reasons and there's bad reasons. We always think it's bad when people leave. Some people just need to go too. I mean, you need to clean the swamp, isn't that what they call it? Once in a while, you need to put good employees in. You need to get move your A+ people up. Don't keep an A employee at the bottom line, because you're going to lose him. Move him up. Get your A's at the top, and then start building more A's from the bottom up.
Fantastic words. Josh, your turn again. What's your thoughts?
Well, Cheryl brought up something I wrote down a note, but do that, you talked about career change, but do they have room for advancement inside the company? Is it an older employee who just can't be in the field? What are those, what do those look like? We talked about stealing of employees. They all have a tracking device on them, don't they, Jerry?
Yeah, right.
Well, they do, right? I mean, their phone, right? It's a tracking device.
Right.
Targeted geocaching around the business. You want to, if you're an HVAC company, you put a geofence up, and you can put targeted ads based on someone's location. that was taught to me a while ago. Where auto parts stores, geofence auto parts stores. Why? Because they're people that are used to working with their hands. You know, they're used to working on problems. You know, after the Cincinnati trade show, I actually broke down on. Actually, fortunately, I broke down at a cousin's house, but my radiator went out, and I had bare minimum tools. And this, I've never been more motivated. You know, on breaking down on a weekend to get. I had the whole radiator out of the car by 7 in the morning when my cousin woke up when I tried to leave. But having those guys, and that was my mentality of, okay, I have to fix this. And that's sort of what we're all looking for, is a guy who, who, you know, I have to fix this mentality. And, you know, how are you, you know, doing that? How are you finding these people? How are you stealing them? And geofencing was something that you can get, you know, you're going to find, you know, you throw enough bait out there and somebody will come there.
Yeah. But again, this is why true leaders prepare. This is why part of management is to prepare for these things. Preparing doesn't mean you're pessimistic. Preparing means it's your responsibility. And one of my favorite things, I said it earlier, and I say it again, and I want to emphasize it here, you're always recruiting. Always be recruiting. Never be recruiting just when you're desperate, not when someone quits, but you're always recruiting. You know, a guy asked me the other day, but I don't have any openings right now. Well, at the same time, amass up this people that are interested. So when you do have an opening, you've got people to reach out to that you've already possibly interviewed. So again, always be recruiting. So Cheryl, this is what you deal with every day. You sit there in your desk and you do interview after interview after interview. And sometimes it's real frustrating because people don't even show up for the interviews. But what's your thoughts about this of always be recruiting?
Hey, I believe in leaving the ads up 12 months out of the year, and most of my clients I've got them doing it also. It's productive instead of counterproductive. We are staying ahead of the curve. We're keeping our name out there. And if we find what I would call, or you would call the gold nugget, we bring them in. We try to find them a job, or we replace someone that's not doing what you need for them to do. You're adding an A player. And it seems like you can only find those kinds when you don't need them. I know that sounds terrible, but when you're needing people, they're just not out there. And certain times of the year, this is a seasonal trade that we mainly deal with. And so there's certain times of the year you're not going to find a body. You're gonna look and they're not out there. So you can't wait. I cannot wait till September to start hiring for the chimney trade, because by that time you need them in-house and hire and trained, and that's where it becomes a problem. So we're always hiring, even if we're fully staffed. We're making room, or like you say, we're letting them know that they'll be called at that time. Don't wait till you need somebody. Stay fully staffed with your staff plus replacements.
Fantastic words. Josh, your turn again. Back to you.
What you described, Cheryl, was Murphy's Law, right? That's one of life's Murphy's laws. And really something to think about it, because you absolutely, when can you never not need an A player on your team? You know, you always need an A player. And that was just a perfect Murphy's Law of, you know, and one of my favorite ones is the buttered side of the bread it'll always fall butter side down in direct proportion to how expensive the carpet is. Those are one of my favorites. So doesn't matter how much planning you do, but I always like to say those geofence things, there's always guys at the auto parts store, right? Those places. I mean, when's the last time you saw an auto parts store go out of business? Doesn't doesn't happen, or at least it's pretty rare. They just put new ones in here. So, those type of things, business cards at those types of places too go, and your local hardware stores go really far in that. But you can always find use for an A player.
Yeah. And I'm going to give you an analogy. I never really worried about flat tires, but I rent a lot of cars. I'll have a rental car tomorrow afternoon heading off into the wilderness of the real world. So one time I flew into Boston, Massachusetts, and I had to drive all the way to Vermont that night. And the tires on my rental car were low. And I kept stopping, trying to find an air compressor, and it wasn't. So finally, after that trip, I found this little air compressor that fit in my briefcase, and that thing goes with me everywhere now because there's just no telling when I'm going to find a tire on a rental car that needs some air in it. And it really can be a big help. And we got to look at this the same way. And like we've talked about, too many managers, they simply stop recruiting because they think we're fully staffed. Folks, that's a real dangerous mindset. You should always be collecting resumes, always networking, always building a relationship, always talking to trade school, always attending industry events. You're always looking. You're on the lookout. And you're ready to hand somebody a card and say, hey, come see me. Come see me. So, Cheryl, back to you. You're the recruiting expert on the team. What's your thoughts here?
Well, I like something that I read not long ago. Recruiting is not an event. It's a process. You can't tell me today you need somebody and me find you somebody today. It just doesn't happen. Well, it did happen one time, but that was not, let's just say that was not normal. But it takes a while to find people, and it takes even longer to find the right people. And that's where people make the worst mistake. They get to the point, especially if they're hiring for themselves, they'll hire people because they're walking and talking. They're desperate. You need to back up and realize you're not going to be able to keep that person. You're not going to be able to train them. You've got to go through the process of getting the people that work for you. And that's why you can't wait until desperation kicks in.
Yep. Josh, back to you. Your turn.
I would say, we're in a specialized industry. I didn't have anywhere to pull experienced people from in my region. I didn't have that ability. We weren't densely populated enough. But, hiring for, not saying, nobody's really looking for a chimney sweep job, but there is lots of construction jobs out there. And if you can at least get someone that maybe has a basic understanding of hand tools and tape measures and things like that, a plumber who's tired of maybe digging ditches, or an electrician who's tired of pulling wire and working in the heat and things like that, you might, chum other ponds and find people that way by looking for, maybe necessarily you're looking for a carpenter. Because if you're doing a lot of fireplace changeouts, what are you doing? You're doing a lot of carpentry stuff. And, in my experience, you still have to, even if you were to find experienced people, that a lot of them aren't trained to the same standards that, our clients are looking for. So then you're breaking bad habits, and that becomes, another set of issues.
Got you. So, but let's touch back on something that Cheryl mentioned earlier. And that is, I talk to people all the time that have B and C level players on their team. And one of the things, if you're going to grow a company, is you got to have A level players working for you. Now, this might make you uncomfortable, but one of the things you need to do in your business is you should be continuously working to upgrade the talent that you have. In other words, you need to replace B and C players with A players, because A players are going to be the people that are going to take you where you need to go. Those are the team members that you're looking for. So, Cheryl, what's your thoughts on replacing those B and C players?
Well, always be aware that your B and C players know they're B and C players. Um, I don't think it's much of a surprise when people are let go, but a lot of employers they hire quick and fire really slow. But the thing about that is you sit and you keep trying to make those, but you need A players. You need a player that will raise standards of the company. They solve problems. They inspire their teammates. They drive growth. They're the people that eventually, and if you pay attention to them and take those A players and let them help increase your B and C's up, eventually you've got a leader. You can move them into the leader position. By then, hopefully, they've showed your B and C players what it's like to be an A player. And so that's where Josh was talking earlier. You can hire within. A lot of times that's if you can move people up and then you can fill the bottom of the tree up and keep moving people up. It's hard to fill the top of the tree up first.
Okay. Josh, back to you, buddy.
As we're talking, I was reminded of a quote from Steve Jobs that, Apple tried to bring in outside talent to be managers and things like that, and it failed miserably for them in the beginning. And what worked for them was, ended up being promoting from within, from people who just I'm trying to describe the word, but just felt the need that nobody else could do it better, or there was just a great need and someone stepped up. They didn't necessarily want to be a manager, but they stepped up. And that's what your A players are, the people that step up and then have that room for growth. That was kind of what I was thinking when Cheryl was talking.
Okay.
And that's one of the biggest companies in the world, most innovative companies in the world.
So here's a question. If you're listening to me right now, this is where I want you to take a really hard look in the mirror. And here's the question to ask yourself. Are you tolerating mediocrity? Are you tolerating substandard people? Are you tolerating a culture? And one thing is, are you tolerating energy vampires? And what's an energy vampire? That's a person on your staff that is sucking the energy right out of yourself and other people on your team. Because this is the thing, great organizations don't. They coach, they train, they develop. But they also can see the signs. When someone isn't growing into what they need, then yes, it's time for replacement. That's what we're talking about. Moving the B and C level players out and getting in on your bus A level players. Cheryl, what's your thoughts?
Yeah, I remember one program we did one time, or that I did, of filling the seats in the bus with the right players so the wheels would go round and round. Okay, it's childish, but it worked. I think people didn't realize that it's not just the person. A lot of time it's the position you put that person into. That's not where they're going to excel. There's a different seat for them. So that's where the manager needs to be aware and pay attention and put them in the right seat. And then excuse me, when you figure out who is not going to work in your company, then it's time to fill that seat.
Got you covered. Josh, your thoughts?
Well, as we're talking about, getting the right people, one of the biggest spectacles of the year is the NFL draft, wouldn't you say?
Yeah.
And the reason why the NFL draft and the NBA draft are some of the biggest spectacles was because, especially in the NBA draft, you hit on your, what they call a lottery pick, and that'll change the face of your organization for the next 10, 15 years. Same thing, we don't have a draft for top players, but that's how much an A player can change your organization. That's why we have these spectacles. Why the quarterback is such a coveted piece for any Super Bowl contender. So if you're thinking about from that standpoint, this is what really an A player can do for our team. And
Gotcha.
having the lines in the water at all times is eventually you're going to hook a big fish.
You got it. So we're wrapping up today's episode. So here's the challenge to put out to you. Take a hard look at your organization, a real hard look. Look at every position in your company and ask yourself, who's the backup for that person? If that person weren't here, who would replace them? But you also look out there, who's being developed? Who's your next? Who's on your bench? Who's in the reserves ready to play for the game that you're playing? So Cheryl, what will be your closing thoughts of the day?
I just want people to remember that, people always leave, whether it's expected or unexpected. And for the way it is in a company, you've got to pay attention. Preparation for this is leadership, development's leadership, recruiting's leadership. It's something that has to be done. And if you don't, your company's going to stay very stagnant if it even stays at all. So start looking at your recruiting. Are you doing it efficiently? And are you doing it in a timely manner?
Fantastic words. Josh, what would be your closing thoughts on today's episode?
Good companies need three things, right? Good people, good systems, and the owner's ability to let go and let those good people do those.
Okay. So here's the final question for you. Would you work for you? If you were working for you, would you be excelling? Are you the person that can take them there? Because recruiting good people without having leadership there is not going to get you where you want to go. So ask yourself that question. And maybe you got to make some changes in yourself to attract people there, to get this team of A-level players that we all need. And with that, hey, I want to thank you for joining us today on the CBC Home Service Success Network. We're here to help you. If you want to build a stronger team, you want to develop future leaders, create your recruiting system, grow your business, train your people, reach out to us here at CBC Success Group. I think we have the things that can help you get to where you're going. And with that, until next time, keep turning your business dreams into your business realities. That's what it's all about. Go for your dreams, man. Go for your dreams, and let's make it happen. And with that, we'll see you next time on the next episode of the CBC Home Service Success Network. Appreciate you being here. It's an honor, it's a privilege, and it's a pleasure to be able to speak to you this week. Talk to you later. Have a good week ahead.